I'm very pleased to be the first to be speaking today because it lets me be the first to say thank you very much to Dr. Rambach. Alan, you have pioneered chromogenic media and made a big difference to an awful lot of microbiologists. Thank you for that, and thank you very much for inviting me to this. It's a celebration, heavens to Betsy. 30 years, wonderful stuff. Now, I've used this title for my talk because I am not an expert on chromogenic media. However, having done the first pioneering work, if it can be called that, with CHROMagar Candida, the publication that came from that is one of the most highly cited in my list of publications. I work, as you see here, with pathogenic fungi, which means I'm working with the very small part of the whole microbiological spectrum. When we isolate a Candida species on a culture plate, it looks very boring. Yeast colonies are far from the most exciting. You might get the occasional hairy fringe on one, but really they're not very nice looking. That Alan has transformed that, I have to say, shows through in that in his own talk, you may have noticed the example he was picking. The point was that this gentleman here, who you may recognize, was one of the early pioneers, not just with chromogenic medium, but with spam. We get fed up with spam in our email boxes these days, but I think most of us have come to call it spam when we get unwanted telephone calls, unwanted letters advertising things, and it was that Alan started because he found everybody who was talking in the American Society for Microbiology Candida meeting, and he sent every one of them a little packet in an envelope and a quite short message that basically said, here's a chromogenic medium that shows up Candida albicans, try it, you'll like it. And everybody who got it threw it in the bin, with one exception, and that was me. And the only reason I didn't throw this piece of spam away was because I was working at the time in industry. I had a lab that was well equipped with a lot of technical staff, and it really was no effort to say, okay, if it works, that would be nice, try it out. It only made a few plates. We tried it out, and sure enough, albicans colonies came up green, whereas other species were coming up white. And the result was absolutely stonking. There's my version of the picture Alan had down at the bottom of his presentation. And it picks out Candida albicans with a green color, Candida tropicalis with a purple color, typically with a halo, and Krusei, which always tends to give large, rough colonies, it somehow manages to exaggerate the appearance of that species on the medium. The point was, we were now in a position to distinguish something that's totally artificial there, because you never see a patient with all these 5 different species in one sample, but you do see 2 or 3, and they do get missed by labs. And so what has happened effectively since CHROMagar Candida was introduced is that people have become used to picking up mixed colonies, and they're stuck with one particular problem. And the problem is called Candida glabrata.
I know nothing about Candida, virtually nothing, but I think it's a matter of principle with regard to DNA-based methods and culture plate-based methods. I think DNA methods are highly sensitive, and I would say probably more sensitive than anything else, and highly specific, but you only find what you're looking for. I think, and by looking at a culture plate, you will find something new. As Pasteur said, if you have the prepared mind, you will see this strange colony and say, what is it? And it might actually turn out to be a new pathogen. And that is what you need differential, strong culture media for, whether chromogenic media like we're talking about, or others, and not just one medium. You need more than one.
I wouldn't argue with you, Carl, but I'm sure we know a lot of people who look for non-cultivatable microbes, and they would say they have the same thing going with various tricks they've developed.
Ultimately, they'll be cultivatable, one way or another.
One hopes so.
Yes.
Really, you're saying we need a lot of technologies, and I think as retired people, we can both look back and say that the biggest enemy biological science has is fashion, where somebody comes along and suggests that only one approach is really going to solve a problem.